Welcome to the Week 6 Starter Sit-em. I'm Jason Gilbo at Fantasy Football Cafe. Giving the rundown as usual, position by position, with those tough matchups that could be a bit tricky this week, and there are a couple of them to really look at. Starting with quarterbacks here, if you're worried about the Bills' defense, and I don't blame you, this is a tough matchup to deal with on the road for Andy Dalton. I'm starting Andy Dalton. The guy is playing lights out right now. The Bengals offense is clicking. You got Tyler Eifert, AJ Green. You got Jeremy Hill at the goal line for his only usage. You got Giovanni Bernard, who's carrying the ball well, also working well in the backfield. The offense is just loaded with talent right now, and Dalton's he's taking advantage of it all. So it's nice to see. I'm not worried about the Bills defense right now. I'm starting up Andy Dalton. If you own him, he should be in your starting lineups. Give the Red Rifle a chance. Who would have thought I would have to say start Peyton Manning this week because of how awful the Denver offense has been? Well, here I am saying start Peyton Manning this week because Cleveland is the 23rd worst pass defense, and you could be like, oh, well, Oakland's pass defense isn't great. Look at what he did last week. Yeah, that's true, but you know what? It's Peyton Manning, Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders. They should be throwing the ball against this team secondary, especially that's been very bad. Joe Hayden is supposed to be the leader of that defense. Has just been horrendous. If you have him on your bench or you're trying to start someone else, I'm still leaning towards Peyton Manning this week. I think we get a nice multi-touchdown game, and could see this going forward. The schedule is very light. Sitting for me this week, Cam Newton. 4-0 Panthers are 4-0 due to their soft schedule so far this season. And, Newton's been playing well, rushing the ball fairly well, but heads to Seattle, going across the country here in Seattle where the defense really kicks it up a notch. He has zero weapons around him outside of Greg Olsen, who, in fact, I will start this week. Greg Olsen's about the only Panthers guy I'm going to start this week. Seattle's been average against tight ends. Still going to have to throw the ball. He should be the one to carry the offense if they have any sort of points at all. Still, Greg Olsen is a start. But Newton, not going to be the guy. I'm trying to find a guy on the bench. Blake Bortles is a guy out there that I really like. Even Brian Hoyer. I actually think Jags-Texans is going to be a pretty high-scoring aerial attack style game. It's going to be fun to watch, actually, which is weird to say with the Texans and Jags, but going to be a lot of offense there, a lot of great wideouts, and those quarterbacks are capable of getting the job done. So, Cam Newton, not starting for me. Phillip Rivers, slinging the ball very well so far this season, racking up a ton of yards. However, going into Lambeau this week, the offensive line I am very concerned about. It's an absolute shambles right now. 5 of them either missed all of practice today or hardly a part of practice at all. It could be a very rough day for Rivers. Staying off the ground and trying to keep the Chargers in. He's going to have to throw a ton, but I don't like the chances for him to really have a great fantasy day. I'm looking for someone with a little safer matchup. So that's one to kind of. I know it's tough right now with the way he's playing, but he should take a seat this week. So for running backs, if you're looking on the paper with this one, the matchup isn't great. Washington Redskins defense is ranked pretty highly. They've looked pretty good, but Chris Ivory, very tough to sit him. The guy he looks somewhat matchup proof. I mean, he's just a tough runner. He beats up. It doesn't seem like anything phases him. And you know what? The guy's gonna get fed the ball, so you gotta like that. The offense is just in a run-heavy style. He's going to see the ball 20-plus carries a game. And we're just looking at last week where Devonta Freeman, who I don't believe is the type of runner that Ivory is, had a monster day. So you can't say that Washington's an avoidable defense, but on paper, if you're looking that way, you think, oh, Ivory, not that great a week. Let's see how he does on the bench. No, get him in the starting lineup. The Pats running backs, both of them, LeGarrette Blount and Deion Lewis, if you own one of them, start them. Of course, don't start both of them. I would still lean towards Lewis. But the Pats have the highest projected team total of the week, and now you can work into the whole Deflategate narrative where they're just going to pound the crap out of the Colts in their own stadium, drop probably a 50 burger on them, and it's going to be a rough day. Probably going to be the way it goes, but not because of the narrative, because the Colts defense is just horrendous. Secondary's bad outside of Vontae Davis. The front seven is horrible. They've never been able to stop the run, which is why I kind of like Blount this week as a nice sleeper play. Because he's probably going to run the ball a lot in the second half, and they have never been able to stop him at all. So there's going to be more than enough to go around for both these guys. I know Lewis, you're probably already going to have him in your lineup, but both of them, give me both of them as well in the starting lineup. This one should be a no-brainer. Jonathan Stewart on the road against Seattle hasn't really done much this week, this season, despite being the lead back. So no confidence in me having him, break out here in Seattle. I'm gonna bench him, find a guy with better upside because they probably have the same, pretty low floor. So look for someone with a bit higher upside and plug them into your lineups. I've been back and forth on this one all week, and that's Amir Abdullah for the Detroit Lions. God, the Detroit or the Chicago matchup is just really juicy. I want him to have a breakout game. I just can't see it happening because you know what? The touches have not been there for him. The fumbling issues have. We saw Theo Riddick get a lot of snaps last week in targets. He had a nice 10-catch game. I think we could see more of that in the passing game. Do get the Lions in your lineup. Keep Golden Tate, Calvin Johnson in your lineups because you know what? This game really features two bad defenses, and honestly, the offenses are capable of overriding the bad defenses, so we should see some points scored in this one. But as for Abdullah, I'm looking elsewhere. As much as I don't like it, I was hoping he was having a better season so far because this would be a matchup that would be huge for him. But I just can't see it happening. There are a few interesting wideouts this week. Mike Wallace really deserves a start. He's going to be healthy. He's fine. Don't look at the didn't practice. He was on the trainer's work-in. He's fine. He's going to play this week. Coming off a nice 8-reception, 83 yards, and a score 2 weeks ago. Had the bye week last week. I wouldn't count on 8 receptions again, but 80 yards and a score, definitely possible against this Chiefs defense. Bridgewater threw the ball 40-plus times last week. And it wasn't like that he was chasing the game from behind. That's just the way it goes, and Adrian Pearson still got his touches, so that's a nice boost for the Vikings offense going forward. I'm making sure I have the Colts wideouts in my lineups this week. Dante Moncrief, T.Y. Hilton especially. Luck healthy, going to be throwing the ball a ton, playing from behind, playing catch up. So if you don't have Moncrief in your lineups, but be sure to get him there. Excuse me one sec. Martavis Bryant should be on your bench this week. I have a hard time having him in my lineup being the home run threat he is, especially with Mike Vick under center. Antonio Brown has already made it known. Get him the ball, which they should have been doing all along, and let him do his thing. Le'Veon Bell's already been the workhorse since coming back from suspension, so sorry. Cards defense is very stout as it is. I can't bank on the home run threat, especially in this game where Mike Vick has been very passive. So I just can't see it happening. He should stay on your bench. Sammy Watkins is going to be back this week, but I'm not rushing him to get into my lineup, especially because Tyrod Taylor might not be under center this week, meaning E.J. Manuel will be. Yuck. I don't want anything to do with that. Bengals defense is looking pretty solid as well. Secondary's in the top 15. Front seven's great. Should be a tough day for the Bills. Defense, looking at the Packers, I mentioned already the San Diego line. Get them in your lineups. Should be another big day at home for them. Bengals, just mentioned all the Bills injuries there. It's EJ Manuel. How much can you really do with this offense? McCoy hasn't looked great. Watkins not 100%. So you really got to like the Cincy weapons there. If you have any start questions or sit questions, head to our forums at fantasyfootballcafe.com, and good luck in week 6.